Decaf Friday for the third time that we've been trying this because I'm having some connectivity issues. But Mark, cheers. Happy Friday
Yes.
with an energy drink and a cup of coffee, which I feel like is true to our form. So we have been a little bit busy at the Beacon Center recently. Well, I say we've been busy. Our policy team has been busy.
Yeah, very good.
I do not envy them. In no way do I want to be a researcher or a policy person because they have been elbows deep in Excel spreadsheets and research for the last months. We have two new reports out. One that we talked about last week with conservative budgeting. Everyone say hi to Billy. She's
just running around in the background.
Conservative budgeting has been out for a week now. So has our innovation report. And then we have two other reports that are coming out soon: student-based budgeting and our pork report. Things are wild over here, and it's a great place to be. Mark, what is it's kind of weird to like pick a favorite because like picking your favorite child, but what is your favorite among the ones that we are talking about?
I mean, I just love the pork report so much. I think that, I mean, you got to give Jason and Ron and the whole policy team credit for doing that. But some of those reports are like, I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. This is important. Like, it's good, but it's like, it's not quite as exciting as the pork report. Let's just say that. Not
That's
to
true.
diminish those reports because they're good, but it's like the pork report is where you kind of find these examples of government waste that you didn't know existed. And it's a really good report this year. And thank you to our designer, Lauren. We're going to do a cool kind of, I guess I don't want to give away what it's going to
Don't
look
give it
like,
away.
but Lauren has a really cool concept for it. So I'm very excited about this, but you really do have to give Ron and Jason credit. Cause I mean, they have been just doing these, I mean, these 10, 12 page reports, like it's been three of them pretty much in the past like month and
Yes.
more, and we're working on other ones for the new year. So shout out to our policy team. I think that we kind of have, it's hard for us, but they have the hardest job in the world when it comes to doing these things. We just have to kind of publish them and push them out on social media and talk to media about them. But they're the ones who do all the hard work on it.
They really are. I think I'm excited about the student-based budgeting report, and here's why. I know that it can be a dry subject, but the BEP in Tennessee, which is the formula that calculates school funding, education funding, I have tried. Now, when I say this, I'm not saying this lightly. I've tried to understand it. It doesn't make any sense. And I think that everyone knows that it doesn't make any sense at all whatsoever. And so the student-based budgeting is something that we're going to be really focused on this year. Do you hear the dog?
Yeah.
So it's something that we're really focused on this year. And I'm just excited to see what we have found as a policy team on how to actually deal with this.
Yeah, and what's kind of cool about this, I mean, I think that the Democrats in the legislatures are making it about something it's not, and they keep saying, "Oh, it's the school choice, whatever." It actually is. It's kind of unrelated to school choice completely. What this is this is just about the process by which how you determine how much money is spent on each child, and based on where they live and things like that. And it's just the Democrats are making this political issue that it's not really, because you're having even these kind of liberal type groups, including SCORE, who kind of agree with that this needs to be overhauled. So this is not some kind of like crazy, right wing school choice thing. It has nothing to do with that. And first of all, we love school choice; it's great, but this is kind of a separate issue, and it's something that it's something that a lot of the left has gotten on board with too. So if you see people kind of trashing it and saying, "Oh, they just want more money for private schools or vouchers or whatever," I mean, it's nonsense, and that's not the point of it. The vouchers or education savings account, we are for that, but that's a separate issue that we are also for. But Justin had a really great response in the Tennessee Lookout, because the Democrats keep trying to tie this in with, oh, they want to take monies out of the public school. It's like, no, that's not at all what this is. Like, this is completely unrelated to your ESA hatred.
Right. Right. And it's easy. And when I see things like that, it makes me mad. Mark and I both went through that this week. We had to like take a deep breath and count to 10 because it makes us mad. But it shows how little people know about what we're talking about when they try to make it about something that it's completely not. It's clear that people are grasping at a reason to hate this, at a reason to be critical of it. And there's just not one. So,
and you have to kind of, and it's amazing how far some people are willing to go. Like, basically you had the Tennessee Holler reposting something comparing Justin to a white supremacist because he's for school choice. Like, it's just insanity. And we talked about this so often, but it's like, at some point you have to move past the personal attacks and you just have to talk about policy. And it's not just one side or the other, but it's like the school choice is a really important topic. And you're really just not doing justice to these kids who, don't have the education they deserve and are kind of in this cycle of poverty. And a lot of it's because of their education. You can disagree on what the outcome is, or, they might say, oh, we just need to keep putting more money into the public schools, but have a real discussion about it. But by comparing somebody essentially to a white supremacist of education, by saying like comparing them to the people in Charlottesville, it's just not helpful for the discussion. And we should have real discussions. And the fact is that the people who want choice the most are kind of those that are impoverished, those who are in the low levels of income, and a lot of minority population. So I do think we need to have this discussion and stop just because you believe whatever the teachers union says 100% and that's all that you listen to. Like, let's have a real discussion, because I think that when you talk about this, it's a lot easier for people to see our side. Maybe they do see our side, they don't want to acknowledge it. But it seems like, especially with this election in Virginia, that educational choice is a huge, it's kind of on the move right now, and it's a big issue across the country because of some of the crazy stuff school boards have done and some of these local schools shutting down. But that's an important topic. BEPs also, it's separate, but it's really important too. And Tennessee has this, like you said, this crazy BEP that when Taylor says she can't understand it, what she means is that no one can understand it. It's not even just her. It's like these people who have PhDs in policy don't understand it. So kudos to our team for doing that. And I kind of went off on two different rails, but school choice is important, and reforming the BEP also important.
Yeah, there's so much that's important, and we're going to talk about all of it. I love that. No, that all needed to be said, and I appreciate that. Something else that needed to be said was on Friday, Justin basically said, go on with your bad self, to Tennessee officials, including the Attorney General, who are standing up to the vaccine mandate on the federal level. And honestly, it has been blowing up. My email inbox has been blowing up. Our Facebook comments have been blowing up. People are like, yes, let's get in there. Let's do something. So Mark, backstory of what happened, and then I can kind of weigh in on the reaction.
Yeah, so I'm sure you saw the news that the Biden administration essentially said private businesses with more than 100 people had to either they basically had to fire people who are not vaccinated, or force them to get a weekly test that's at the cost of the employee to show that they don't have COVID. So this is something that, I mean, outside of where we are on vaccines, I know that personally, me, you, Justin, we're all vaccinated. It's not like we're for vaccines, but we're not for the federal government in saying that you have to do that, and especially telling private businesses that you have to do it. It's way outside the scope of what they can do constitutionally. So Justin wrote this great blog post kind of explaining why this is just the federal government has no right to do this, and they're not even allowed to do this. And said that the AG from Tennessee, Slatery, he filed suit against the federal government, saying he was one of the, I don't remember how many states it was. It might be up to like 18 states now, but saying you can't enforce this. This is unconstitutional, and we are suing you. And Justin kind of said like, hey, Beacon's behind you. We're going to offer the legal ammunition you need for it. So it was kind of an exciting thing, especially because I think it's a really clear example. And I mean, I want to hear what you have to say, but it's a clear example of just like the federal government doing something they absolutely shouldn't. No matter what you think of the vaccine, whether you're for it, against it, no matter what you think, this is the federal government completely overreaching to an extent that's completely unacceptable, and it's going to force people to be fired. It's going to force businesses who don't want to fire people to have to do that. It's the government getting involved in business in the way that we always say they shouldn't.
I'm going to read directly from Justin's blog post. He said, Ronald Reagan once said, the closest thing to eternal life on earth is a government program. And this is the part that I loved. If we don't stand up to this egregious overreach, it will set a dangerous precedent for the federal government to intrude into our workplaces and our lives for years to come. Okay, that is the long and short of, and I think that is why, not to like go back to millennials and why millennials don't understand sometimes like our take on these things. But when people say, oh, I would rather pay taxes so the government can fix something, or I would rather just pay my taxes and let the government fix it and we don't have to worry about it anymore. That is such a dangerous take. And that's why people don't really, I think that a big separation between me and a lot of my friends as far as what we think is the one side of thinking that's, well, the government should take care of it. And my side of thinking, which is, well, nonprofits or businesses or other entities that are not the government should take care of these kind of social services, is because once the government gets involved, it's like a cycle of, well, we saw a need, and now we have to make ourselves valuable, and we can, once we get in a little bit, we'll get in a little more, and we'll get in a little more, and we'll get in a little more, till ultimately we're controlling your lives. That is such a dangerous approach. And I'm seeing it again in this vaccine thing. Rather than individual responsibility, these mandates, these being told that you have to do this, and the government's looking out for you, and they have your best interest in mind. And the more and more we start to think that, the more and more the government will take. If we give a little, they'll take a lot. And so it's just the mindset of who does it best. Do we do it best, or does Big Brother do it best? And I just think that individual responsibility comes before anything else. And if you agree, let me hear an amen, Mark.
Oh, amen. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's like, I think that you're 100% right on that. And that's kind of something that's important. But when we talk to people on the left, like, this is one thing I want to talk about with this, is like, just because you think the end game is good, right? If you think, oh, everyone should be vaccinated, it's how do we get there? And would you be okay if somebody on the other side did that?
Right.
What if Trump said, I think that abortion is a national emergency and we need to ban it. Like, I'm going to file an executive order through OSHA banning it. They would be crazy up in arms and say, oh, that's unconstitutional. You can't do that. But when they like something like that, same thing with immigration, when they're like, oh yeah, like the dreamers are allowed to stay. It's like, but then when Trump stops it, you're mad. If you don't like, imagine the opposite of what that's it. So imagine if the federal government said that there's no employer in the world that can ask for a vaccine. They can't do that.
People would lose their mind.
I know, and you need to think that way when you're trying to think through whether or not you think it's a good idea or not. I mean, because you think about all the executive orders that Obama had, right? Think about the executive orders that Trump had, they went nuts about. It's like, you can't have it both ways. Either the government should do this or they shouldn't. It doesn't matter if you agree with it or not. And this is, to me, is something the government clearly shouldn't do, even if we all, it'd be great if everyone was vaccinated, but it doesn't matter. That's not the government's job.
This, Mark, you have just really hit a nerve. This is what happens when you don't have principles, and you just go with what makes you feel good or what makes you happy. If you don't have principles, if you don't believe in something, you will fall for anything. We have been hearing that since we were children.
Yeah.
Like, that is something that parents tell children. If you don't believe in something, you will fall for anything. And now we've got adults, grown adults, who are just like, well, I like this, and so I'm just going to say it's a good idea and give them
I like how they have a southern accent, the adult that you're talking about.
I always do this. I don't know why. I always put on a voice whenever I'm upset with somebody. But it's like, you give them a blank check to do whatever they want, even though it's so blatantly lacking in any type of principle. And that really, man, that strikes a nerve. I need to stop before I start saying ugly words and Justin gets mad.
No, that's good. And like, I heard for 4 years how Trump's a fascist, which of course nobody understands what that word means. They just use it forever. And Biden's not a fascist either, but like, you can't say somebody's a fascist and be like, oh yeah, but I'm also for this policy where kind of this overruling government is doing this thing that we have no say in. It's like, people don't understand authoritarian. They don't understand the term fascist, and they call everyone they don't like that. But like, this is just a great example. And look, people on the right need to think about this too, because people praised, some of Trump's executive orders when they said, oh, Obama shouldn't be able to do this. So just try to, and I mean, I'm personally, I think we talked about this, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a constitutional person. This is a personal opinion, but like, I don't even understand. I don't really think executive orders should even be a thing. That's my opinion. I don't think that one person should have the ability to just put in whatever they want. I know that there is some, constitutional rules, and Biden may have gone over this with this OSHA ruling, but I just don't believe, and I know there's probably a reason for it that I'm not aware of in history, but I don't believe at this point in time there should even be allowed to be executive orders. I think it should have to go through Congress.
You know me, I will blame anything that I don't like on the bureaucracy. If something happens, I don't like it, even if it's just even if I'm doing it for the sake of comedy.
Oh, Alabama lost. Oh, I hate the government.
I hate the bureaucracy. Yeah. Like how some people will blame the patriarchy, I blame the bureaucracy.
Yeah, there you go.
I just always do that, even if it's comedy. Usually it fits, because usually the bureaucracy is responsible for a lot of the things that I absolutely hate. But I'm big on blaming the bureaucracy. But I actually agree with you. I think it's a load of crap that
it's checks and balances. That's what our whole system is checks and balances. It's not bureaucracy in this case. It's like that one person. We're not in a monarchy. We're not a place where somebody should decide everything. And of course, this is just a personal opinion. I don't know any of the legal stuff. I'm sure there's a reason for it at some point. But right now, I just don't agree with this idea that one person, who wins 50% of the vote can do all these things that are really important.
Yes, it doesn't make any sense. With the stroke of a pen, you can
Yep.
enable this massive US bureaucratic structure to decree change on people's lives. It feels so wrong.
Yeah, because people were mad at Trump or were mad at the Democrats. They voted for Trump. So should he be able to do it? And then people were mad at Trump. So they voted for a Democrat. Like, just because you feel one way, basically one day in November, like, doesn't mean that person should have all the power to do whatever they want. But that's just a personal opinion. I haven't looked anything up. I just don't like the idea that especially that executive orders have seemingly become so much more frequent over the past probably 20 years.
Yes, exactly. If you look at executive orders based on presidents, it will make you want to throw up. It is actually so sickening to think that one person with the stroke of a pen can dictate how our lives operate and run. It's absolutely disgusting. So
Right.
anyway,
And if you're going to agree, so that's cool.
I totally,
Yeah.
you know me, I'm just like small government to the point of like pay for my roads and get out of my life. Like I can't, I'm like that small of I'm that much of a small government person.
But not with the infrastructure plan that only pays for roads like 10% of the money. Just pay
Yes.
for the
Like actually pay for the
yeah.
freaking roads and then get out of my life. Like
Yes.
that's kind of what I think the role of government is. Speaking of just like crappy government policy that infects all of our lives, inflation is up. It has hit a 31-year high. And if you haven't realized it yet, then you're not as much of an online shopper as I am. I have seen things. I can't even, and I'm not going to say what it was because my family listens to this podcast, but I was getting something. I'm already buying Christmas gifts because the supply chain is so freaked up right now that I'm just buying Christmas gifts now because I'm not waiting till December when everything is an absolute disaster and everything is sold out. I was buying something for my sister that I already have. And I know how much it was when I bought it last year. And it has gone up $20 since last year. Like that's insane. And there all these like little websites that I'm going on have notes that say the cost of our supplies has gone up. Sorry for the cost. Like this is actually, it is a nightmare season to try to buy Christmas gifts. It's a nightmare season to try to do home repairs. It is a nightmare to try to do anything because inflation is just going off the charts.
The one good thing that we can find out is that the Democrats are wrong when they say that businesses don't pass down the cost to consumers. This is literally the example of how they pay. But I mean that's all they always said. Like, oh no, we can raise taxes. They won't pass it down to consumer. Like that's not the way it works. Like that's exactly how it works. And this is how we see it.
Should I do a Twitter series of things that I've bought for myself that my sister has then liked and asked me to buy for her? And I'll put the receipts side by side, screenshots of the receipts side by side, and show you how
And
the
say
prices
businesses
change.
don't pass down the cost to consumers because that's, I mean, I think that's one of the more insane things that the left kind of goes on when they talk about raising taxes on businesses and people with money. But either way, yeah, the inflation thing is it's becoming a real problem, and it's hard because we don't necessarily notice it on normal things in our lives on an everyday basis. You're like, oh yeah, milk is $2.70, it was $2.39. It's like that 21 cents doesn't necessarily hit you, but like you said, when you have big purchases, you notice it. With gas, you notice it.
With gas? Oh
Because
my
you remember
God.
exactly what that number was. But I don't think people understand how big of a deal it is. And there's a great post today. It's like unless you're I just saw something right before we got on this thing, unless your salary went up 6.2% this year, that you got a pay cut.
Yes. That is, wait, say that louder for the people in the back. Say it
Yeah,
one more
unless
time.
you got a 6.2% raise this year, you took a pay cut from work.
That's like the realest thing I have ever heard. And also gas right now. So I got a Sam's Club membership because gas is just cheaper and I live super close to Sam's Club. And I have been watching the gas prices go up. I remember in 2008, I went to a youth leadership conference. I promise I'm going somewhere with this. In 2008, I went to a youth leadership conference. They had us write letters to ourselves that they would then send in 10 years. And for some reason, I wrote on my letter, gas is $3.75.
Oh, good. That's cool to know.
I just wrote it. I don't know why I did that, but I was like,
Yeah, there's a
gas
thing called the internet
75
now. You don't have to
2008.
write that down, but
Okay, well, I didn't know. I mean, it was 2008. I had no idea. So when I got the letter in 2018, gas was like $1.50. Like gas was so cheap. And I remember looking at that and thinking like, wow, this is like kind of insane how things have changed in 10 years. And now, only 2 years late, 3 years later, we're back to really expensive, ridiculously high gas. It's $2 more than it was when I got the letter from 10 years ago. It's so upsetting. Even Sam's Club, I'm like, man, y'all used to really be, y'all used to really be cutting deals for a girl. And it's just
They
like
can't
the
they can't
devil's
lose money.
same.
Yeah. And it's the whole inflation thing. And I'm not an economist. I don't quite understand who's to blame for this, but I
Mhm.
can tell you one thing outside of I don't know who's to blame, but I do know that these infrastructure deals is every time we spend this much money, it's going to make it worse because we're obviously devaluing our money by doing that. And we're going to make inflation substantially worse. And the White House certainly owes an apology to Larry Summers, who was we actually talked about this, maybe a year ago, that said, listen, inflation is going to be a problem. And it kind of went from the Biden administration saying like, oh, inflation's not a problem, it's not a big deal, to, oh, it's short term. And then it's like, now it's like, oh, like I saw something on MSNBC, inflation's actually a good thing. It's like they're just going like it's insane. And as much as it might not be, President Biden's fault, I don't know. I actually don't know exactly how that works. It's like he's going to take the blame for it. And I think they already took the blame for it at the ballot box a little bit. And
Mhm.
if things don't turn around in a year, I think that it's not going to be good for the Democrats running for Senate, because this is a real problem. And the more it goes up, people without money are the ones who probably see it more. The people who are saying like, oh man, I only have whatever $400 a month for groceries and all this stuff, and they're the ones who see that, oh, that 60 cents, like, oh, that really affects me.
Also, the supply chain issues are absolutely ruining my Whole Foods experience. I went in Whole Foods the other night just to get a bottle of water before I went no, I literally went in because I was at Green Hills. I was going to see a movie and I just wanted a bottle of water because the movie theater charged like $3 for a bottle of crappy water. So I just went in Whole Foods. The shelves were like empty in the drink section. Like I've never seen it like that before. Even their cheapest water was completely sold out. It's shocking. I actually had a friend
It
call
might
me
just be
last
because of how much the Green Hills movie theater charges. Everyone's going there beforehand and getting their water.
I know, probably that also. But I had a friend call me last night and he was in the grocery store and he was like, have you been to a grocery store recently? And I was like, funny you should say that. Yes, I went Monday night before I went to the movie theater. And he was like, I have never, like, aside from a snowstorm, a hurricane, or right before COVID, I've never seen the shelves looking like this. Like, this is a serious, serious issue that we're up against right at the holidays. And I don't know what it's going to take to fix it. Maybe some sensible economic policy. I don't think that we can count on that, but
Yeah, I mean, I have seen enough people say, look, it's easy to blame, Biden and the Democrats for it. It's not mostly their fault. I think the supply chain issues were partially because of local Democrats shutting down, like with the
yes,
COVID shutdowns. I think
yes.
they are responsible. Then potentially some Republicans too. But like the point is, how are we going to get out of this now? It's not really how we got into it. A lot of it is just, but it's like, okay, well, first of all, it seems like don't try to pass another $2 trillion bill, because that is only going to hurt everything. It's just, you need people with some common sense,
Shut
and
it
they can
down.
keep doing this, but they're going to pay for it. And of course, we're going to pay for it as a country. But if I was a Democrat, and I'd be like, okay, we need to step back. We have all these other issues. Is this something we absolutely need to pass now? Maybe just pass, if you want to, just the 10% of it that actually goes to infrastructure, and then get rid of the second bill, and then the other 90% of the first bill.
Yeah.
It seems like it might not be. I don't know whose fault it is that we're here, but if it continues to go on because of this, that is going to be their fault. They're the ones who passed the bill.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I think, like I said, we need some sensible economic policy. I don't count on, and I'm just going to say this, I don't count on Democrats to deliver that. And I'm unfortunately, those of us who are just like solidly middle class, like I'm just like straight up middle class, we're going to be bearing the brunt of a lot of this. And it's going to be a sucky season until people realize that what they're doing is not working. And these policies are not cute, and they're not sweet, and they're not fun. Last thing I'll say today, and Mark, I know you don't care, but there's a lot of things that you talk about, honestly, that I don't care about. And so it's my
Yeah,
turn.
really.
It's my
I said you can talk about it. I don't care.
it's my turn. Last night at 11 p.m., my world changed. Here's how. Taylor Swift, a few years ago, had her catalog, had all of her masters bought by a mean man. And it
Oh, stop. No, this is okay. This is already so biased. Okay, this is
no, it
I'm
is
done with
biased.
this.
No, it is very
Oh gosh. Oh, I love capitalism until I don't. That's what it sounds like from you right now. You don't like that somebody legally bought something that was for sale.
no, I think he can totally do it. I'm just saying he's a
He's
mean
not
man.
mean for trying to make money for buying a Cadillac. What's Scooter Braun? That's his name.
Yeah, he's just a mean man. I think
I
he's just
don't.
mean.
I think a
He's
lot
a
of people have
steady
defended
guy.
him. I think that Taylor Swift's the mean one, but whatever.
Well, I'm Team
She's
Taylor.
rude and she's
Anyway, this is my story. A mean man bought Taylor Swift's masters, and capitalism, baby. You can buy what's for sale. But she has reacted in a capitalistic way, which is not fighting it, but making an even better product for her fans. And she came out with her new version of Red, which is my favorite Taylor Swift album. Came out at 11 o'clock last night. By 11:01, I had already purchased it on iTunes Music and was downloading it and also listening to it on Spotify because we got to give her those streams, baby. And I was sitting at the kitchen table just really processing it all. And I have to say that last night, between the hour of 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock, was maybe the best hour of my life. And that's not being dramatic.
I know. A CD that came out. You've already heard all these songs. Like, why is it that exciting?
No, because she had some songs from the vault that no one had ever heard before.
Okay, so there was new songs on it.
There were new songs on there, and there was a 10-minute version of my favorite song, All Too Well. And all I'm saying is, if you've never been a Swiftie before, just give it a chance. I'm just going to make my plea, and then I'm going to step away. If you've never been a Swiftie before, give this one a chance.
It might be better to present this in a less biased way, but...
Listen, I have no shame. I know I'm biased. I know that I don't like Scooter Braun. I know that
I've not heard a bad thing about him except from her. And it's not like, obviously she's had some issues. Some people seem to like him. It's like, he obviously did something that he thought was a good deal. And like, he was like, I'm not trying to hurt. Like, I just want, and he sold them already, right?
Yeah, he's really covering his tracks, but I think he's just a mean man. And listen, I don't say that I'm not being principled. I do believe in capitalism. You can buy something that's for sale. And listen, we love a horse race. We love competition. She's just re-recording.
Oh, no, that's fine too. Yeah.
I'm a big believer in capitalism. If she had fought it and whined and sued and done all this stuff, I'd be like,
she did fight it, and she really tried to drag his name through the media. Like, she was really awful with him, and like literally just said horrible things about him for weeks because she was unhappy with like just deal with it. It was for sale. You don't like the people who own the music sold it to him.
My personal take is that he's a turd, and that she can re-record and own her music and then release more that's even better. And
well, I agree the second point, but not the first point.
Okay, well, I'm here for it. It was incredible. I had some other friends come out with music last night. One of my friends released a Christmas song, his version of I'll Be Home for Christmas. And after listening to all of Taylor Swift, I was emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally not prepared for a really sweet version of a Christmas song. But I don't know, Mark, do you love New Music Friday, or is it just like lost on you? Like, are you just listening to fast forward?
I think we should talk about Christmas songs next week, though. Like our favorite, because I think I'll Be Home for Christmas is one of the most I don't like that song at all for Christmas.
You don't like it? Let's talk about it right now. I can't wait.
No, come on. We've already taken up too much time. Let's rank our Christmas songs next week. Because I have like two or three that I think are really good.
And between now and then, everyone who's listening to this, at least go listen to the 10-minute version of All Too Well by Taylor Swift. Today's the best day of my life.
Okay.
And on that note, I'm going to mic drop on Taylor Swift. Mark hates it. And listen, sometimes you just got to give me the reins and let me talk about what I want to talk about. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Bye.
Call to action. Read the reports. Read Justin's blog post. Listen to Taylor Swift. Peace and blessings. We'll see y'all next week.